Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 26th of May of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And before we start, I would like to give you my opinion about this current situation. You know that I see that most likely we are going to enter the next stage of escalation of the special military operation, not just of the special military operation, but the next stage of escalation between Russia, the European Union and Ukraine. We see that according to reports we got today that every single party of this conflict is still very far from the peaceful settlement of the conflict. We see that something big is going to happen in the very near future. So let's discuss everything that happened today and you're gonna understand most likely what is going to happen during the next probably even days, not weeks or months, during the next several days. First, let's talk about Ukrainian massive drone strike that took place during the previous night. According to pro-Russian resources, according to the Minister of Defense and according to Ukrainian sources, during the previous night the Ukrainians carried out another massive missile drone attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation, and in this picture we can see up the approximate routes of Ukraine attack. And as you can see, according to this picture, the Ukrainians were trying to break through Russian layered air defense in the direction of the city of Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation, and in the direction of the city of Kazan, probably the capital of Russian military complex. So and as you can see, the Ukrainians, and according to the Minister of Defense, we see that Ukrainians manage have possibilities, more precisely have possibilities to get the capital of Russia. When talking about the Russian side, according to information we have, the Russians during the previous night strike back. And we have different pictures, and we have different pictures of maps of Russian routes of attacks. If you take a look at this picture, we're going to see that the Russians were attacking the city of Odessa and its region, the city of Kiev and its region, and the western part of Ukraine. Probably the most interesting attack took place in the western part of Ukraine. According to information we have, the Russians during the previous 24 hours attacked the city of Starokonstantinov, and most likely the Russians attacked this airfield. And this is very important. We will discuss this. We will use this information during the next 5 minutes. And right after all these strikes, right after all these attacks, we got several important articles and several important statements. And let's discuss probably the most important one. Today, the German Chancellor Merz stated that Britain, France, Germany and the United States have lifted restrictions on the range of weapons supplied to Ukraine. There are no longer any restrictions on the range of weapons supplied to Ukraine, neither by the British, nor by the French, nor by us, nor by the Americans. This means that Kiev can now defend itself, including, for example, by striking military positions on Russian territory. Until a certain point, it could not do this. So that was stated by the German Chancellor. So we know that this is very interesting because the Russians published today several articles, many sources published several articles regarding the situation. And this is infographics on Western missiles, bombs and drones taking into account Merz's announcement of lifting restrictions on their use against targets deep inside of Russia. So as you can see, the Ukraine has a lot of weapons, lots of missiles that were provided by the Western countries that can be used to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. And the most important, Ukraine currently have different types of missiles that can get the city of Moscow. So if we compare this map, this map shows the different ranges of different weapons, and if we compare this map with this map, we're gonna see that Ukrainians were trying to breach Russian layered air defense systems exactly on the way to the city of Moscow, exactly along the range of German Taurus missiles. You know that later we got another report published, another article published from Germany, or at least about this Taurus missiles, Germany may provide 100/150 Taurus cruise missiles, similar to the British-French Storm Shadow Scalp systems. About 415 or 450 kilometers is the shortest distance in a straight line from Moscow to the nearest point of the Ukraine border. Taurus hits at 500 kilometers. So another important thing, and I would like to remind you that Germany recently made a very interesting thing. Germany closed any information about any missiles provided to Ukraine. So currently this information is classified. So this is very interesting. And furthermore, according to information we have, we got this report yesterday. That's today on the 26th of May of 2025. According to information we have, the Netherlands will deliver the last batch of 24 F-16 fighters to Ukraine. And we haven't received anything about the situation today, but now we understand why the Russians during the previous night were attacking the settlement of Staro-Konstantinov with its airfield. Most likely, if Ukrainians were planning to get these F-16s, most likely they would collect or keep them somewhere here, or they were planning to use this airfield for further escalation. So now let's summarize everything. The thing is that since the beginning of the 20th of May, the Ukrainians have already sent thousands of drones in the direction of the city of Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation. The Ukrainians used thousands of drones, which means that the Russians were forced to use probably thousands of air defense missiles. Maybe not thousands, maybe hundreds, but the Russians used a lot of assets, lots of things to bring down all these drones. So that is why we believe that the Russians currently, maybe they are not empty, I'm talking about their air defense systems, but obviously currently the Russians may have suffered some problems with air defense missiles. And right now, after thousands of drones probably managed to breach Russian layered air defense system in the direction of the city of Moscow, the Western countries, more precisely German Chancellor, announced that Ukrainians have no problems and no health restrictions to attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation using Western missiles, cruise missiles. And when talking about this German statement, you need to understand that, first of all, he wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and the United States of America. Some people expect that most likely the Ukrainians are going to use Taurus missiles in the very near future, but if you ask my opinion, you need to understand that most likely Germany will not risk like this. I'm trying to tell you that not that Germany will not allow the Ukrainians to use their Taurus missile systems, Taurus missiles. Of course, they will allow them. The thing is that most likely Germany will not allow to use Ukraine only Taurus system. We know that several months ago, the European countries created the coalition of willing, and we expect that during the next 24, 48 or 72 hours, this entire coalition of willing will attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation using every single cruise missile they have. This is going to be an attack with the use of Taurus missiles of German production. This is going to be attack of Storm Shadow missiles of Great Britain, United Kingdom production, and obviously this is going to be an attack with the use of Scalp missiles of French production. So this is the main point, that I'm not sure that Germany will take all responsibilities for themselves, because everybody, Russia will recognize immediately if Germany used or if Ukraine used Taurus missiles. But if all these Western countries will use all these missiles all together, this is going to be like a united attack, a coalited attack on the Russian territory. And of course, then the Russians will have some problems with some strike back or something like this. But obviously this can lead to unpredictable escalation of the conflict, because if Ukraine and the Western countries and the coalition are willing use at the same time drones from Ukrainian production and all types of cruise missiles, this can deal significant damage to the capital of the Russian Federation, to Putin's reputation, and obviously this will break the entire negotiation process, or at least this will put Ukraine in stronger position during upcoming meeting that is going to take place, upcoming a second round of talks that is going to take place in June of 2025. So obviously this is something that Russia will never accept, and this can lead also to unpredictable escalation from the Russian side as well. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and let's start with the most important direction. And first let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction, where the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions significantly. First, let's talk about the most southern part of the Kliban-Byksky pocket. The Russians most likely managed to eliminate this pocket by the time we started making this video, but we still haven't received anything that can confirm this. We just believe this, and we see that everything tells us about this. That most likely that by the end of the 26th of May of 2025, the Ukrainians abandoned and left this pocket further in the northern direction. We're not saying that every single Ukrainian managed to quit this pocket. Most likely several groups were encircled by the Russians without any chances for evacuation. Most likely these pockets of resistance the Russians would try to destroy during the next several days, and then the Russians will move further in the direction of Alexandra Kalinova. So we are waiting for final adjustments of map in this area. Most likely during the next 48 hours everything inside of this pocket would be colored in Russian favor. We have no doubts about this. So as you can see, according to probably updates we got during the previous 24 hours, most of the sources confirmed Russian control, almost complete control over this territory. This information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources, by pro-Russian resources, by other pro-Russian resources, and by neutral mappers. When talking about neutral mappers, they also reported that Ukrainians have already begun escaping this encirclement. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours we got another video from the village of Romanovka, where we can see two Russian soldiers that raised Russian flag. So based on this video we haven't adjusted anything, because the day before yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported complete control over this territory, or yesterday, and now we have just another proof with this. So Russians secured this territory, Russians continue offensive operation, and tomorrow and during the next 24 hours we are waiting for additional updates. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area along N32 road. As you can see, we have lots of very interesting updates, and you know that this evening we start receiving more and more updates in this area, which means that the Russians intensify their pressure. And telling the truth, the situation that you can see right now in front of your screen is already not relevant. It's relevant, but it's not relevant for fun 100%, because right before I pressed the button to start making video, we got additional updates further in the northeastern directions towards the village of Rusinyan. So there should be much more changes on the ground. We just haven't managed to add them. It was time to start making this video. So tomorrow we're going to receive additional changes on the ground, and we will discuss everything in more details. As for the end of the 26th of May, we see and we have colored this huge number of territories and polygons in Russian favor based on this video that was published by the Ukrainian sources. In this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking, FPV droning and bombing and striking Russian units, Russian soldiers, Russian vehicles in this area. The video doesn't have very good quality, but several positions from this video were geolocated, and the most important is one of the strikes was geolocated exactly in this point. The Ukrainians were attacking Russian positions exactly in the northern part or in the central part of Popov Yar. Based on this video we have adjusted the territory. Furthermore, I'll remind you that yesterday we got report that the Russians were trying to send their kamikaze vehicle with the purpose to destroy Ukrainian trenches, but kamikaze vehicle was destroyed as a result of Ukraine FPV drone attack. And based on this video yesterday we made several changes along N32 road, and today we got another proof that the Russians managed to move even further. So now we have no doubts about complete Russian control over these territories. Currently there are very heavy clashes for these villages. The village of Popov Yar, we have proofs that the Russians entered the village of Poltavka. When Russians finished the battle for this area, when Russians established complete control over this territory, the Russians will move further in the northeastern direction towards the village of Rusin Yar. And once again, right before we started making this video, we got another geolocation, and according to this report, the Russians have already established complete control over everything inside of this red line. So we see huge progress of the Russians. We see that Ukrainians can't stabilize the situation. They can't slow down the Russians. If Russians take under control the village of Rusin Yar, this is going to be the beginning of biggest disaster for the Ukrainians on the territory of the city of Konstantinovka. Obviously, the Russians will increase their pressure with the purpose to outflank Ukrainian positions to the north of Yablunovka. We're talking about the complex network of the fortifications, and everything here can collapse like in a minute. Just in one day, everything can be, let's say, destroyed by the Russians, cut in many pieces, and then the Russians will handle with every single piece separately. So this is the situation in this area. At the same time, the Russians are waiting for something to the southeast and to the east of the city of Konstantinovka. We have lots of videos how the Russians were bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine with FAB, how the Russians were droning and attacking Ukraine vehicles and equipment with FPV drones, how the Russians were hunting and destroying Ukrainian FPV drone positions, but without any changes on the ground. It seems that the Russians from to the southeast and to the east of the city of Konstantinovka are waiting for something. It seems that the Russians are waiting when the southern and the southwestern flanks of Ukrainian defense in Konstantinovka collapse, and then the Russians will begin their offensive here as well. As for the end of the 26th of May, we see probably huge pressure from the Russian side with the use of different calibers of different types of artillery systems like Tolstoy flamethrower systems. We see the use of Russian FABs, once again without any changes. The Russians continue accumulation and masses their forces. They're massing their forces here with the purpose to begin offensive, but when time comes. Now let's move back a bit and let's discuss the second very important, the most interesting area. We're talking about the Sumy direction. The Russians during the previous 24 hours also managed to improve their position significantly along the border. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to secure the village of Belovode, and this information was also confirmed by the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. And as you can see by this video, in this video we can see how a Russian soldier was waving with the Russian flag somewhere in the most southern part of the village. So based on this video, we have adjusted the map, and not just based on this video, also based on the Ministry of Defense report. Furthermore, the Russians reported complete control over the village of Volodymyrovka. So we see that the Russians, when talking about Belovode, there were very heavy clashes. The clashes in this area have taken for probably maybe months or something like this. But when talking about Volodymyrovka, the Ukrainian sources are saying that this attack in this direction was unexpected from their side. The Ukrainians didn't expect that the Russians can carry out this such a fast lightning attack that can lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian defense. This is very important because if the Russians indeed carried out fast lightning attack in this area, this means that the Russians didn't stop and that the Russians continue advancing further, and most likely currently the clashes are taking place for the settlement of Novo-Nikolaevka. You know that today we got another very important article. We haven't added this article to map, we will discuss this tomorrow, but today several sources reported that Ukrainians, with the purpose to stabilize the situation in the area of to the south of Kliban-Byk, were forced to redeploy a lot of brigades exactly from the Sumy direction. The Ukrainians reported they redeployed the units of the 44th Mechanized Brigade. The Ukrainians reported that they were forced to redeploy units of the 36th Marine Brigade, which, according to a position of this brigade, previous position, was located exactly on the line between Yunakievka, Lokny, and Belovode, and another very powerful brigade was also redeployed from this area. So you can see Ukrainians sacrificed their Sumy direction with the purpose to stabilize the situation in the vicinity of Konstantinovka. The Ukrainians removed 3 brigades from this area in favor of Konstantinovka, and now the Ukrainians began suffering problems in the Sumy direction. As you can see, every single front line is connected with another one. If you want to increase and improve your positions on one direction, probably in cost of another direction, then you need to expect problems. And this is exactly what is happening right now here. The Russians continue their offensive operation, and we expect the beginning of clashes for the next defense or line of villages in this area in upcoming probably days or even hours. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kharkiv direction, where the Russians also resume their attempts to attack. Currently there are very heavy clashes for the forest to the east of the city of Volchansk, and the Russians are about to finish the battle for this area. Ukrainians have huge problems in this direction because since the beginning of April the Russians have destroyed lots of bridges and different logistic roads along the river of Volcha. Ukrainians suffer problems and most likely they would be forced to fall back. As for the northern Kupiansk direction, as for the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of videos how the Russians were bombing and attacking, and all these videos remind us like something like the beginning of artillery and aviation preparation of this direction. Lots of artillery strikes, several warehouses and ammo depots were destroyed, several temporary deployment points of the armored forces of Ukraine were destroyed, lots of FPV drone attacks on logistic of Ukrainians in the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region. So lots of things along the line of combat contact, but deep inside of the territory of Ukraine for 5-10 kilometers. It seems that the Russians are checking and trying to test where exactly they should move next. As for the southern Kupiansk direction, there are very heavy clashes for the village of Redkadub. Today, several sources reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions in the village. We are waiting for additional geolocations, and most likely we are going to get some during the next 24 hours. Today, the Ukrainians reported that they were forced to fall back from the tree lines to the south of the village, and several pro-Russian resources that indeed reported that indeed the Russians managed to improve their positions. As you can see, the Russians managed to outflank the village of Redkadub from the south, and now we expect that the Russians are going to move further in the direction of this only road between the village of Redkadub and the village of Karpovka. If the Russians can establish physical control over this road, then Ukrainians will start to suffer huge problems with their logistic. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction. From this area we got lots of icons as usually these days. The Russians continue their offensive operation, but now the Russians are concentrated on the village of Kamar and the village of Alexeyevka. The Russians are moving in the fields to the west of Bogatyr and Radne that were taken by the Russians during the previous 4 or 5 days. The Russians continue offensive. The Ukrainians are trying to hold their lines, but we see that this direction is coming to the second, let's say, turn to the second probably attention for the Russian, both for the Russians, for the Ukrainians. Despite Russian progress on the ground, most likely during the next several days we are not going to receive lots of updates from this area. The Russians are going to move through the fields in the direction of Kamar. It will take some time, and then we're going to start receiving more updates as well. When talking about the Gulay Pole direction, the Russians continue offensive operation, and the Russians, according to different sources, are about to establish complete control over this territory, over the territories of both villages. Most likely during the next 48 hours, both the village of Zelene Pole and the village of Novopol would be taken by the Russians, and then the Russians will continue moving further in the direction of Timirovka. As we discussed in the previous video, currently there are lots of no-name battles for no-name villages ahead of the Russian units until they get the settlement of Gulay Pole or the settlement of Pokrovska. We're going to receive lots of updates from this pocket of these all no-name villages, and obviously this is going to be a very long trip for the Russians. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.